Hey, I'm Lauren Sapala. I'm doing a 3-video series all about intuition because I'm teaching a new live class this March called The Creative Power of Intuition. And I've been getting a lot of questions about it even before I announced the class. So I just want to talk a little bit about what I'm going to be teaching and a little bit about intuition for INFJs and INFPs and how this can really change your life. Because I think even if you don't take the class, you can watch this little video series, you can get a lot out of it, and you can kind of figure out what intuition is and where it fits into your life. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm a writing coach and kind of a life coach actually at times. I coach INFJ and INFP writers, and I've coached INFJ and INFP writers for the past 7 years. So I've talked to a lot of INFJ and INFP writers, and I coach some people who aren't writers too, but all of my clients are intuitive people. And what I see is that a lot of intuitive people, especially in today's society, are divorced from their intuition or disconnected from their intuition, to put it a little bit more mildly. But we feel separated from our intuition. We live in a society and a culture that does not encourage the use of our intuitive gifts. We live in a very rational culture, so all of us learn how to think very well from a young age. In our schools, our workplaces, our government, our programming, it all urges us to really use our mental skills and not rely so much on our intuitive skills. For INFJs and INFPs, this can be really, really damaging because we are first and foremost, intuitive people. So we have to use our intuitive gifts, or we will end up feeling very unhappy in life, to say the least. So what an INFJ or an INFP person looks like who is disconnected from their intuition, and I get this all the time. I get emails from people who say, I think I'm an INFJ, I might be an INFP because I connect so well with your books, or I know deep down I'm very emotional, things really affect me, I'm a writer, I seem to fit the bill in a lot of areas, but I tend to present as an INTJ. I am a very rational thinker, and I find it hard to get into the intuitive space. I find it hard to connect with the wilder side of my creativity, and I'm very, very at home with mental processes. So I do feel like maybe I'm an INTJ, INFJ cusp. Now, there are actually INFJ, INTJ cusp people out there, but a lot of the time what's happening is the person is an INFJ or an INFP. They are a feeler, and they are an intuitive feeler, but because probably long ago, somewhere in childhood, they figured out it was safer to always go with their thinking side, their logic side. They present as an INTJ. So they're very good at building systems and figuring things out and troubleshooting. They might work as an accountant. They might work in finance. They might, crunch numbers or do something that's very data driven. But there is this deeper part of them, I don't want to say truer, but a deeper part of them that needs to be heard and recognized, that is connected solely to their intuition. And that's the part that's sort of crying out to be heard. So what happens when an INFJ or an INFP person was raised in a home where intuition was not encouraged? Maybe their parents even actively shut it down and said, you have too wild of an imagination, you need to get your feet planted on the ground and your head out of the clouds. Or they had some trauma in childhood where it was not safe to be them. They had to go into this kind of inner shell. They disconnected from their intuition at some point. And now, as an adult, there's something off. There's something off in their life and they don't know why. There's something missing. A lot of times this manifests as anxiety, where the person suffers from low-grade anxiety all of the time, or when it comes to making big life decisions, or even medium-sized life decisions, but choosing to get a new job, choosing to start a relationship with someone, choosing to move from one location to another, deciding whether or not to adopt a dog or a cat. Like any sort of life decision, a lot of this anxiety can come up and they can really grapple with, am I making the right decision? I don't know if I am, and feeling a lot of uneasiness around decisions. Once a decision is made, not feeling fully satisfied with it, dreading the decision coming up and having to make a decision. All of this angst around decisions. That's a telltale sign of someone who's disconnected from their intuition. When you are fully connected to your intuition, your decisions will feel rock solid. They might still feel scary, but there won't be this, did I do the right thing? I'm really questioning it. I'm going back and forth. I can't seem to make myself make decisions. I'm procrastinating. There won't be all this anxiety around decisions. So that's just one of the telltale signs that an INFJ or an INFP is disconnected from their intuition. Another really big sign, which sounds kind of general, but this is a really profound truth, is that you're just not happy in your life. You just have this feeling you're not where you're supposed to be. And everything might look okay on the surface. You have a job, you're making good money, or you're in a relationship with someone that you have no complaints about, but there's this feeling of something missing. There's this feeling of, I thought life could be more. Is this all there is? Is it just me collecting paychecks, commuting to this job I don't really like? Maybe even having a circle of friends who are okay, but I don't ever really feel like I'm fully myself around them. And that's part of it, is this feeling of I'm not ever fully myself around anyone. I always wear some sort of mask. And maybe I'm not outright lying about who I am, but I always kind of have some sort of mask on, whether it's my coworker mask or my mask with my family or my mask with my friends. But I never really fully expose who I am. And when I dig below that, I'm not even really sure I know who I am. So there's, again, this anxiety around identity. And it kind of feels like the same anxiety around decisions. It's this, I dread looking at that. I don't want to look at that. I feel weird looking at that. I don't know what that means for my life. And it comes up in flashes. It comes up in maybe periods of downtime, maybe periods of loneliness. It might come up where the person starts to feel very anxious and afraid about, well, what does my life mean? What's the meaning of all this? What am I doing here? Like, when am I going to achieve whatever it is I thought I was going to achieve? And sometimes they don't even know what that is that they thought they were going to achieve. So these are really, really big issues that really always manifest in some sort of anxiety, again, around decisions or identity for INFJs and INFPs. And these are really big red flags that you are disconnected from your intuition. At some point long ago, you decided it wasn't safe to use it, so you started suppressing it. And it has a really unhealthy effect on us because it is our first function. Even if you're not into Myers-Briggs, I can tell you, like, the basic thing is that INFJs and INFPs are intuitive people. That's what we do. It's like if you were a German Shepherd. German Shepherds want to herd animals. That is what they're bred to do. If you get a German Shepherd and you put it in a tiny little apartment and you never let it run around and you never let it exercise, it's going to be a very unhappy animal because it is specifically made, it's specifically wired to run around and chase things and be out in the bright sunshine and be outdoors. So that's an INFJ or an INFP when we're not using our intuition. We feel like that German Shepherd who's in this tiny little apartment and cooped up all the time. Anxious, pacing, suffocated, stifled, and we don't quite know why. So what are some things you can do to reconnect with your intuition? This is something I get all the time, and this is part of the stuff I'm going to be teaching in the course. How can you reconnect with your intuition? How can you tap into it? And how can you trust it? For this video series, I'm going to start you off with a really easy exercise. Anyone can do this at any time. I always recommend journaling for greater self-awareness. A lot of times when people say, well, that's great, I like to journal. I used to journal when I was a teenager. But I always find myself just kind of falling into stream of consciousness stuff, or maybe just ranting on the page. And I don't really get any answers to what I'm looking for. So I always recommend you start with a specific question. For this exercise, I recommend you take, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. It doesn't have to be a lot of time. Sometime when you have some quiet downtime, you can be by yourself, and take the first 5 minutes, close your eyes, do some deep breathing. And I want you to imagine yourself when you were 8 years old. Really put yourself in your 8-year-old shoes. What did you look like? Where did you live? Who did you live with? What was your day-to-day life like? How did you see the world? Really like bring all that stuff back. For some people who had heavy childhood trauma, you don't have to go that deep into it. I really want you to just remember who you were at that time. And then write on a piece of paper, you're 8 years old, as the 8-year-old, what do I love and what's most important to me? What do I care about? What am I interested in? And then I want you to answer those questions. And it might be very simple. You might just make a list. For me, it would have been books, animals, playing pretend, nature. Like those are my things. If you want, you can go deeper. Like I could say, I really loved animals. I was already beginning to start to get interested in animal rights and people experimenting on animals and how that was wrong and the damage and impact it has on the environment. Like you can go as deep as you want into this, but I really want you to be as truthful and honest as you can about what made you happy, what fed your soul when you were 8 years old, and what were you drawn to? What really interested you? Now, when you're done, look that over and read it over. And whatever you put down, those are your natural gifts. If you were attracted to animals, you have a natural gift with animals. If you were attracted to playing pretend, you have a natural gift with your imagination. If you were attracted to hiking, you have a natural gift of having a relationship with the earth. So whatever you put down, those are your natural gifts. You might want to do this exercise a couple times. You might do it the first time and find yourself feeling a little awkward or embarrassed or weird. That's okay. If you need a trial run, go for the trial run. Also, I do recommend you handwrite when you do this. You can type. If you're like, I really hate handwriting, I can't do it, or I have arthritis in my hands, it's not going to work. That's okay. But really try to handwrite if you can. If writing at all is not an option or you would prefer not to, I would urge you to record yourself. You can use your phone, you can use it like a simple app, whatever, but record your voice, especially if you're an INFJ or you're an INFP who is not that strong on the I part. If you're like an extrovert, introvert kind of cusp, if you are like, oh, I'm kind of an ambivert, like I lean towards introvert, but I definitely have extrovert tendencies. ENFJs and ENFPs are verbal processors for sure, which means they need to hear themselves talking out loud and talking ideas out. It's most helpful if it's to someone, but it can just be to the air too. So if they do really well when they're writing if they're actually speaking out loud when they're writing. So if you are sort of like the I part's not that strong or you feel like you're on the cusp, try the voice recorder, see what happens, and then play that back and listen to yourself. So what might happen after you do this exercise is you have some aha moments or some really hard stuff comes up. What usually happens when you read it back over, you start to see the point where you began to suppress your own natural intuition. It becomes apparent, especially if you do the exercise a couple times, you'll really start to see, oh, that was where I abandoned my intuition. That was where I stopped believing in it. That was where I let someone else tell me that I was not to listen to that. That was where I let something else come between me and my true source, my true heart. You will start to see that. And a bunch of stuff will come up around that. Maybe shame, maybe anger. A lot of times it's fear. Well, now that I've discovered this and I'm reconnecting, what if it happens again? What if I disconnect again? How can I make sure that doesn't happen, that I don't abandon myself and I don't abandon my own intuition again? That's actually something I'm going to cover in video 2. And I'm going to go much more in depth with all of this in my class in March. So if you are interested in that, please keep a lookout on your inbox. Details are going to be coming through as I confirm them and really, really wrap up the last details, which I'm doing right now, the very, very last details. So please keep an eye on your inbox. If you have any questions, please leave a comment on this video if you're watching it on YouTube, or email me, writecitysf, writecitysf@gmail.com. There's also a contact form on my website. I love questions. No question is too big or too small. So please email me, contact me, send me your questions, we'll get them answered. Until then, I will see you in video 2.